Good morning. The October 19th, 2021 policy work session is now in session. Pam, please call roll.
Mrs. Belford? Mr. Susan?
Here.
Mrs. Campbell? Present. Mrs. Jenkins? Ms. McDougall? Present.
Please stand and say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are here today to hold a policy work session on 5 policies. This is the board's opportunity to make revisions and provide suggestions. Once the policies go into rule development, changes other than technical or scrivener's errors will result in the policy process being over and will have to be re-advertised. We will begin with policy 2520 on the section and adoption of instructional materials. Ms. Jane Klein, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Leading and Learning, will be providing us with the executive summary of revisions.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. The purpose of this proposed revision to the policy is to ensure compliance with all applicable federal and state laws, Florida State Board of Education rules, board policies, administrative rules, procedures, and guidelines. In addition, the proposed revision promotes transparency and accountability. The policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding the selection and adoption of instructional materials, parent objection to instructional materials, and the New Worlds Reading Initiative to be in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision including the parent objection of instructional material and the New World Reading Initiative. These proposed revisions do encompass the suggested language from Neola.
Any questions, comments? All good?
Yes.
Anybody else? Ms. McDougall?
Nope,
Good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, I have a lot.
What's that?
I have a lot.
Go
I'm
ahead.
just waiting for everybody else.
Okay. Go.
So I guess, when we're looking at we're doing 25 and 20, 25, 20, and 25, 21 are kind of together. So I guess my first overarching question is why are we changing the whole entire policy?
So we are now under New World Reading Initiative. So we've been directed to revise our policy to encompass that in both of these policies. So we followed Neola's suggestion, and that's why we upped the timeline, because the New World Initiative has to take place beginning in December.
Okay.
So that is why, and to be really frank with you, I never wanted to touch this policy ever again, because when I look back at my notes on this policy, I began working on this policy in 2015. So I worked on this policy and worked on this policy by following Neola. It might be easier to, in the old one we had K, is it J, we laid out every component of challenge materials. What we've done is removed it from policy, and I'd like to write it into an administrative procedure. Because, for example, the situation that just occurred, we followed the policy. We did the initial step. We notified the principal, and then the assistant superintendent, in this case secondary, took charge and took action. And we didn't have to go through all of the procedures. But if we took those procedures and made administrative procedures, they would encompass all the steps.
So, okay, thank you for that general. And I don't have a problem with the New World Reading Initiative, except that it seems repetitive to have it the same language in
Both policies, yes, I agree totally.
So, and there's a lot of repetition actually between the two, and sometimes it's not identical. So I'll hold some of it until we get to 25, 21, but when down on K1,
Pardon?
down on K1, I'll just start with the,
Let me get there.
yeah. So
I'm going to go to the clean copy.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
where- Okay.
either one. I mean, because the clean copy is pretty much the red line version without the cross on. Okay. So on K1, parental objection, I understand what you're saying about putting into J, but the problem then is, we as a board spent a lot of time actually revising it twice in 1 year to get that just right. We revised it in April of that year, revised it again in June of that year, to get this part just right, to try to make it fair, not to be over the top. And I know we've probably used it 0 times, maybe.
We have.
We have.
Used it 0 times.
Okay.
We've used it 0 times.
Right, but we have it.
Yes.
But we have it. So when I think about the situation just recently occurred, to me, that never had to go through that process because whoever the administrator was could look at this policy and say, you know what? Our policy and state law says instructional materials in our schools cannot be pornographic. So we'll just yank that. We don't have to go through a,
Right.
To me, the appeals procedure was for when it's found and there's not an obvious reason. And we need that. We don't have to go through it, but we have it if a parent, if it's, the first thing is go to the school and say, hey, I found this, and if the administrator doesn't automatically see something that doesn't align, then we can go through the process. It's not that we have to go through the process. So I would like for us to put J back in.
Okay.
The other thing, because another problem that I have with K, which is now what we took this whole long paragraph after paragraph, and it's not even a summary of this, because what it says in K is that parents' legal guardian should make any objection in writing to the principal at least 10 days before the intended use of the material. The problem is parents don't know that these materials are coming. Are we going to then ask our teachers to get all the materials out there more than 10 days before they're about to use them? And I don't think that's practical. I think our teachers wouldn't appreciate it. So most of the time when we hear about these things, even just recently, not with that one, but with another one that I just sent you not very long ago,
Right.
parents find out when it comes home with their kid. And by then, it's too late to do anything to this, but maybe that's a material that they could say, hey, let's not use this again. There was a situation in the past year sometime with this supplemental scholastic piece that the district did not approve, but a teacher ordered it on their own. And again, didn't know about it until it had already come out. So I really don't like the 10 days before, if it's, because we're not talking about textbooks or things that parents would have access to. I just don't think it's, the only time I can see anything like this coming out is when we send out the letter for the Hammurabi's Code lessons. We send out those letters, hey, we're going to do something if you want to take a look at it, and then you go over and read it in Hammurabi's Code, and most people don't have a problem with it. That's the only thing I can think of that has ever fallen under that type of timeline.
We can easily go back and insert J into the policy. We just literally took Neola's,
Right.
and it's the will of the board. It's your call. It's easily moved in.
I just think we spent so much time working on that and just to get this right. And I'm not doing it because, hey, we worked on it and I want it in the, I'm just thinking, I think
Nobody worked on it more than me. I'll just tell you that.
I know. Headache wise, I don't want to give anybody a headache, but that's that. 3, the next one is an L. This is more of a question of what exactly are we meaning here on L3 when it says, oh, no, not L3. Oh, number one, free instructional materials. Are these things like YouTube videos or like this math websites that the kids use sometimes that are free to the user if they just have an account?
Yes.
Ms. Klein, could I add to that?
Yes, ma'am.
We often get resources from outside agencies like the EPA, or we get constitutions, or in career and technical education, we receive a lot, so probably more so in secondary than elementary. But we work with the Smithsonian foundations. We work with different veterans groups that create resources. So it's actually fairly common in our world.
Okay. And then number 2 under that talks about the initiative for securing the materials should be the type that teachers seek rather than materials forwarded to them to promote the interests of an outside agency. And that was also in 2521 in a different number.
So that's just a vendor sending you stuff,
Okay.
wanting you to try it, and we'll give you an Amazon gift card if you use this.
Okay.
happens all the time.
Well, it also sounds like, like activism to try, is what I saw it as. Then number 4, no, I'm sorry, N.
The New World?
The New World, yeah, this was just a question about the process, if we already know the answer to it. Are the big books supposed to be delivered to the school or to the home? Do we know that yet?
To the home.
And are we paying for that?
Can we put them in the backpack? I mean,
No.
Well, I worried about if they're being delivered to home, the discrimination factor there. Oh, hey, why are they getting books and I'm not getting books?
So, the Lassiter Center at UF has taken on the project for this day. They're trying to select a team to run the program. They're giving us bits and pieces of direction. To be frank, it's going to be very interesting to be able to pull this off by December, and that's their timeline. Our last directive was schools had to complete a list of students who met the criteria, and it's K through 5, and it's below grade level, and it's substantially deficient students, or students who scored a level 1 or level 2, or in the K 3, it is below grade level on iReady. So our schools are creating that list with their literacy coach and their media specialist. That list is then uploaded to a document that the Lassiter Center has created. Parents are going to be then notified through a letter that is being sent to us to be sent home to these parents of options, and I have not seen such letter yet. You can go on and look at the different genres and select the books that you would like, and it's based on grade bands. So from that information, then they will develop a list and then the distribution of these materials. I'm not 100% sure what the final decision is on distribution. There's been talk about they'd be mailed to the house. There's been talk about being sent to the house. They have now added a component for parenting and how to use the books at home. And so our media specialists and literacy coaches will be doing those trainings. We took Javon Bloom, who was 100% Title I, and we've reclassed her to 90% Title I, 10% Fund 100, so that we can use her to be our point of contact for the entire district, because it's not just Title I schools, it's any school.
And the charter schools too.
And the charter schools as well. So she can be the point, and then she is working through the Lassiter Center to make sure all the processes are in place. It is a huge task. Gave me great pause when it first came out in July. I went to Dr. Mullins and was like, there's no way we don't have a person who all they're going to be doing is getting books together. And so there's been lots of speculation of where the books are actually going to come from. Is it going to come from a book vendor? Is it so?
So
But
they don't have all the details handed out. But I guess my main concern with that is if we do deliver them to the schools, which would be maybe somewhat more cost effective if we're doing it, there's I have concerns with why are you getting a book and I'm not getting a book?
But the same thing goes with the students who we could do it the same thing when they get the Friday
Yeah,
backpack
the
with
meal.
food.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
there's ways to do that, but I think it would work.
Right, and so the Lassiter Center, they finally were able to select a coordinator of this program. Now they're trying to select more employees to work with this program, but it is,
By December, right?
So is that money distributed to us and then we would send it to them, or is that New Worlds, is that going to the organization or to the UF or whoever's the funding?
the funding, we have not been told anything about funding yet.
Okay, so it's separate, it's not in our FAFP at all, okay.
But we have to fulfill the state requirements.
Right.
So just to add clarification, Ms. Klein, has the district received any funding to administratively support this DOE mandated initiative
Not that I'm aware of.
that impacts all K through 5, grade 5 students who are below grade level or grade level deficient?
Not that I'm aware
Just for our viewing public, want them to be aware of a significant DOE unfunded mandate initiative that is required to be implemented by December 31st, 2021, and neither do we have any funding, nor do we have any direction of how that's going to impact our schools or our administrative staff. So, I am not disparaging the cause, the interest, the value, the validity of this effort by any means. We want books in our kids' hands, in our kids' homes, in our parents' hands, but it is concerning. This is a significant effort. We will be held accountable to get these books at the end of the day into the homes of the appropriate students, and there's been no acknowledgement of the task and the responsibility that's being put on the district in this initiative. So,
of. The other component is we will have to be, our media center, our media specialist and our literacy coach will have to do parenting. That is a component, parenting sessions on using the books.
So is that, how is that gonna look? Is it gonna be different for school to school? I'm thinking, I mean, could it be a YouTube? Could it be?
It can be text message hints on how to read with your child. It can be a YouTube. It can be an actual, I think it would depend on the number of families that are going to need to be
At
involved.
each school.
So it can be emails, it can be Blackboard, it can be, we just have to keep record of everything that we're doing so that we can show evidence that we've actually fulfilled the law.
Right. Because I mean, we struggle to get parents to come to things, so that's why I was wondering how we're going to. And I'm assuming that we're going to have it multilingual.
The books are multilingual and the parenting will be as well.
Just one more on this one. If you look at the old policy, letter G, talked about access to instructional materials that we, number one, the board shall provide any written notice to parents with access to child's instructional materials, will be posted to the website. Is that in the new the revisions anywhere?
That is,
I just couldn't find a section on access. Or is there going to be any change to?
so the access, so 2520 is about the selection and adoption of instructional materials. The 2521 is instructional materials program.
Okay. So I noticed, and again, I keep mixing them, but there's so much.
They are so, I mean, to me, it could be one massive, huge.
Right. So and then we have less repetition. So in 2521 talks about public inspection. I'll get to that. Yeah. But it's not the same, because to me that one is like, these are ones that we're going to adopt, and here's how you can come look at them before we purchase them. G in the old policy is, here's how you have access to see the ones that we have currently, I guess.
And that is in, so that is in 2521.
Right, but if that's really more talking about, if I'm reading it correctly. Oh no, it says that have been purchased, never mind, scratch that. So all instructional materials, sample copies that have been purchased by the board. So yeah, that would apply. All right, so that answers the question. I think that's all I have.
And I think that the most important piece is when we look at 2520, it is about that selection, the adoption process. And 2521 is, these are the materials that have been board approved and are adopted and are in our classrooms, and these are the procedures within that.
Okay. So then my request would be that we add J from the old policy into whichever one is the most appropriate. If that's not, since that's not selection and adoption, that's more after the fact, then maybe 2521 is the better policy to add that back into.
You have more requests?
Not on this policy,
You have any more discussion on it?
not on this policy.
Does anybody have a problem with adding J into the policy?
Not into this one.
Right. But is there anybody that's going to have problems with that we need to be discussing right now? Okay. Anything else, Ms. Kay? Anything else, Ms. Kay?
There's just, Jane, I think I left you a voicemail message. And throughout the 2521 is where I noticed it more, but in this policy, if you go to A4, or 4, what it is, there's typos. It means there's words that are running together. And throughout the whole thing, so I don't know if you want to have somebody look at that or not.
So under Neola, they fix all of that before
Okay,
they
good.
make it.
It's a formatting issue using Neola's.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, I said, oh my goodness, are we not
Yeah,
getting
they
it?
should fix all the like weird spacing issues and all that.
Okay, just checking,
The
thank you.
clean copy looks a little better.
Right, well, I'm looking at the clean.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I missed that.
Thank you for looking into that. We don't need them to get the books that we're trying to send to the other kids.
It's just like, you know, Jane, I salute your department. If you need our help, let us know if we need to pack up books. I'm concerned by December how this is gonna fall into place.
It may be an initiative coming your way.
Hey, we've done that 4 load stuff up in the back,
That's
of the truck.
Between hand sanitizer and children's.
I just don't want to drive down the highway with a pallet again, so.
And actually, I don't have that pickup truck anymore either, so I'm doomed. Like Monday.
So can I ask a couple of quick questions? How many students are we looking at roughly?
We do not know yet.
So we have, we're still identifying the ones that are
That directive just went out last week.
rough estimate, you think?
Um,
Okay. Letter selection, so I'm assuming that it's by grade level, like you said, and then they get to choose some books. Are we tying those? We don't even know what those books are to try to tie them to the curriculum that exists inside of our schools right now,
That is
right?
correct.
It's
Okay,
by the
so we
interest
have-
of the student.
Right, and if it's gonna be a free reading, that's great. But one of the problems, like when I was teaching night school that I had, was you're teaching, 20 different platforms. So one of the things that our students are supposed to do is also work with the parent that's having these issues. And it becomes difficult when you're putting a bunch of books inside of a kid to start to read, that then they start asking questions back. We have to tie it to our curriculum, which would be the best practices and stuff like that. So
It is truly to just get books in the hands of children
that's great.
and in homes. And it is, because of the textbooks that we selected, benchmarks, is a state approved. And our reading list comes from the state approved list. I would imagine there would be some correlation, but I can't guess.
So one of the other things is that we have a group of retired teachers that goes to retired one schools and they deliver the little stuffed animal with some books and stuff like that. So they try to do the same thing. It's kind of the same way. They don't coordinate with them. They're just trying to get kids to read. It's a good program. It's just a lot of work on it. So the requirements on us, this all has to happen by December.
December 31st is the day that we have to have everything uploaded. That does not mean that the books are distributed.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's what I was.
That's where we are right now, but I get an email about every other day about some changes, so.
And then Ms. Campbell made a great point. What do we do when the parents who are out there say, why are those kids getting free stuff and stuff like that? One of the things we're doing is, and this is just happening, and Dr. Mullins are 100% with this, we are getting drugged down by people trying to attack our system without advancing our kids. And so what's happening is that individuals who may come out and are not asking us for the right reasons are also asking to try to create some sort of problem with whatever we do. Those individuals are holding back our overall society because we're trying to target kids that need the reading. You know what I mean? So just for everybody in here, if we start finding that kind of stuff, I don't care right or left, they're gonna get, basically call them out, because this is a good initiative to try to get behind. It's just a little bit crazy. So with that, I'm good. Does anybody else get any questions? Good?
Not on this one.
Okay, all right. So next is policy 2521 on instructional materials and the administrative procedures that accompany the policy. Ms. Klein will also provide the executive summary. Ms. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. The purpose of this proposed policy is to ensure compliance with House Bill 3, signed into Florida law by Governor Ron DeSantis, creating a statewide book distribution program. The new policy details the duties, qualifications, and procedures of the reviewers in the role of selection of instructional material. The policy clarifies the process for confirming accuracy of instructional material. The policy details the bidding and purchasing process for instructional material. The administrative procedures clarify the district's role in implementing the New World's Reading Initiative to comply with applicable Florida law. Areas within the policy include the following: the role of the New World's Reading Initiative district contact in building community awareness, identifying students, notifying parents, and coordinating book delivery. The proposed policy encompasses the suggested language from Neola.
Any questions,
I just-
comments, concerns?
I don't have, not on this topic, but I have a question, just an overall question, Jane, with this. And you may not have the answer with this READ initiative. So are we selecting it? I thought that the state was giving a vendor list of books. Do we have that ability, or do we not know yet?
So my understanding, my current understanding is the state will be sending the information to parents, and they will be selecting from the state.
Okay.
Ms. McDougal, if you put that in the process with how many ships are sitting out inside of our ports that haven't even delivered the goods for Christmas, it's going to be very difficult for them to take all these orders and push them out also. You know what I mean?
Yes, eh?
It's going to be a little while.
Yeah.
As you're going down that road,
We're talking Tallahassee.
I sympathize with you.
And this one says the delivery may begin no later than December 31st. So, but I have a feeling, considering the current situation that we're in, there's hopefully going to be some grace all around, especially if we're not in charge of the delivery.
Right, and the, next year, it's no less than 9 books
Oh, wow. It's almost one.
per child.
Yeah. So the October, no later than October, in normal years, right? Will we be then using the last data, for example, the ones who don't have FSA, the younger grades, primary grades? Will we be using their last I-rating for there, or will we have to figure out what their first I-rating is of the year and then send it?
So we're using the iReady baseline diagnostic information.
So the one they take at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
So we have to get that pretty quickly coordinated if we're supposed to be delivering books by October in a normal year.
Yes. And we would be completely voted.
Okay. I have some more.
Go for it.
Okay. So in B1F, this is a really long policy. So B1F, there is, okay. I can find where I wrote my notes, which include, let's see. Oh, first of all, I think these 2 points under F, maybe we're supposed to be a continuation of the points under E, because it doesn't fit. They kind of come out of nowhere, but it makes more sense if they go under E. So E says, in the selection, the standards used to determine the propriety of the material shall include age of students, educational purpose, and then under F, the degree to which material will be supplemented, and consideration of broad racial, ethnic, all that. F doesn't really have a colon, so that's why I'm wondering if those are supposed to actually be under E.
So this truly is straight from Neola. So I can go back and look at that.
Okay.
So you're in B.
Yeah, B number 1, little e, and F. I think those little I, little 1 and little 2 Roman numerals are, I think both of those under F are supposed to actually be number 3 and number 4 under E. because they're about the propriety of the material. And F is about, priority shall be given to the selection of materials which encompass the state and board performance standards, which include the instructional objectives, talk about that. And then there's no colon, there's no really reason for subpoints, and those subpoints actually fit really well under E. So I think it makes, when I looked at that, I thought, oh, maybe they're supposed to be there instead of under F.
I will double check with Neil.
Thank you. And then under that, the first point under F, which, you know, in my opinion should be number 3 under E, says, the degree to which the material will be supplemented and explained by mature classroom instruction. I would like to know what that is.
It would be grade level appropriate.
Okay, thank you. It just stood
Do
out.
we want to just say that instead of mature?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes
because when
more
I hear
sense.
mature, I
I
think
think
it's
it's
your
something
bookstore.
different.
Right,
I think it's
right,
something
Not only that, but let's just face who determines what mature is.
Right.
It becomes a different
Right,
thing.
degree to which the material will be supplemented, explained by
Yep.
grade level appropriate.
Right. At least gives it some sort of scope.
Right.
Because the maturity of some of these kids, whether they're in fourth grade, might be a lot different than what other ones are.
Right.
So,
Right.
Wouldn't you just change the word mature to grade level?
Yes.
So explain by grade level classroom instruction versus mature.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you. B1 little c, sorry to go backwards, I wrote this one.
B1, little c, got it?
This is not a change, actually, I was just looking, this is, as they were reviewing the instructional materials, it says, and I'll just point out, and this was, I think, where it would take care of a lot of the problems that we're having with things moving forward, and it says, it will be recommended by each reviewer shall be to the satisfaction of each reviewer, and included in that is non-inflammatory. So I think, actually, I appreciate that line in there, because, you know, that means we were able to kind of head some of these off ahead of time, but,
Isn't that inflammatory subjective?
yes, it is. That's why we have a variety of reviewers on the panel. Okay. E4 in this policy, and sorry, I knew I had some crossing between the two, but they're so similar that I was caught on some. But E4 talks about, and in B1 in the last policy, so B1 and E4 in this policy, B1 and 2520, talk about giving access to the public 20 days before the vote. I know that we do that, but we also have in the past given access. For example, right now, we have access to our math instructional materials right now, correct?
So that's the selection, that's
the
not
selection.
in that's in the selection process, not even in the adoption process. So you've got your selection process when we go through about 4 months of
Where everybody can look at all the choices, right?
take all the vendors and put them out there, and we have all these public meetings.
Right.
We had one last night at Stone. We had one parent come.
Yeah. So my question is, that's not written, that is our norm, that we do that, but we don't have that written anywhere in policy, do we?
That is in our selection process, yes, it's
Okay.
in,
Okay.
Administrative procedure or policy?
no, it's in our policy that we do a selection.
Right.
And
Is
then-
it in these two policies? Because I guess I didn't see that.
It's in
I just
25.
wanted to give us credit for what we do, because we've had, that's been called into question. And last year we talked about the ELA adoption, well, you didn't, I'm like, no, because I got letters, and I've been on social studies. When last time I did social studies, I had a upcoming 6th grader, and I looked through every 6th grade, and I remember we did it earlier in the year, so,
So, yeah, so we start the selection process, and we have an actual timeline. We put it out on our social media. It
I know that
goes
we do.
everywhere. So it is very clear. The only adjustments we make is when the state gives us new direction.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that part, because I knew we gave that access earlier in the selection process. Thank you for correcting me. All right, G, B, this is mainly a question. I guess it's G number 1B. It says, by the 2015, 2016, okay, must be a Neola thing because we didn't have this policy before this year, but use at least 50% of the annual allocation of the purchase of digital or electronic on the state adopted list. Okay, never mind, I think I actually incorrectly read this. So this is saying we have to use at least 50% from the list. I thought I was saying we have to use at least 50% on digital.
No.
Okay, so 50% of our allocation has to be used on the state adopted list.
Which Dr. Sullivan and I, we don't go off the adopted list.
Okay, so unless we have a class that I think is listed in here that is not a state, there's not state adopted.
Right, if it's state adopted, if the state recommends, that's what we purchase.
Okay.
And that's why last year when we were in the ELA, we delayed that because we were waiting on the state to give their final list.
Right.
And we were not going to have you all say yes until we were sure it was on the state adopted, approved list. And the state board had said, these are the approved materials.
Thank you.
Could I add that there's actually two different 50% requirements. There's one 50% requirement that we have to use 50% of our allocation on state adopted materials, which is what Ms. Klein just said. There's a separate 50% requirement that our allocation is spent on digital materials. So both things are true.
Okay.
So that's been true, as you can see, since 2015, which is why all of our instructional materials include a digital component. And so we're inherently meeting that requirement because we are purchasing materials that have a digital component.
Okay, so it still says we have to use at least 50% for the purchase of digital materials, but they also have to be on this, so it's all of that
Yes.
together. in
But
one.
they could make, but it's two separate things. So some of our materials may not be state adopted because, for example, workbooks that come within the adoption aren't always state adopted. They actually separate some line items out. It's very strange. Some of our courses don't have state adopted materials, so we are separately making sure. We probably spend, Ms. Klein, would you say about 80% on state adopted?
Or
some of our-
85 maybe.
Yeah, and then separately, we have to make sure half of our funds are spent on digital. Those digitals may be in non-state and state adopted. Those digitals can live in both spaces.
And we really had a struggle with elementary because
Correct.
prior to this adoption, they didn't put anything on digital. So we really,
But all of ours were digital.
everything she was doing was digital,
that hit
nothing on mine
50%.
was digital.
Well, and then the quality of it. I mean, you know, they're saying make it digital, but then on top of that, the quality of it, so they're forcing people to purchase something that would be inferior almost just because the quality of what's out there, you're requiring people to do it without any quality controls in the back end. So
Yeah,
I applaud you
the
guys.
cost of my books are so expensive that it's always inherently covering the 50%. And so Ms. Klein can just choose what's best for her students. Ours are so expensive, ours all have digital.
And some of them we have, some that we have are both, right? We have this.
All of ours are both.
Our new ELA is now both, and our component of it. And what we're looking at for math, we're looking at it as well.
Are most of the vendors just including that in the cost? You buy the paper
All together,
and it's, we're throwing the digital. version.
Well, they all learned a lesson when we did shutdown and we had no digital materials. If you recall, in elementary, we had to pull everyone on my team back from spring break to write digital materials because we had none.
Right, right.
Should have got a lot of participants with that.
My whole team, believe it or not.
So just something that I think probably needs to be cleared up in S. Oh wait, hang on, before we go too far, I had one in G. Another one in G. GC, I had just question marks. Says we have to use up 100% of the portion, the annual allocation designated for the purchase of instructional materials for kindergarten and up to 75% of that portion designated for first grade. So they're saying we can use up to 100% materials off the list am I reading that correctly? I wasn't quite understanding what that means.
Use up to 100% of the portion of the annual allocation designated for the purchase of instructional materials for kindergarten.
To purchase materials, later on it says, to purchase materials not on the state adopted list, which shall be used for the purchase of instructional. So it's saying we can, is that saying that we can use up to 100% of the allocation for kindergarten on materials off the list and up to 75% for first grade?
Right.
Off the list, but we don't. Okay, so it's a policy because it's in law, but we don't have to use it. Because we're staying with the list, which is protection for us, so I very much appreciate that, because that's if somebody comes back and says, you know, well, this was off the state list. And then we can narrow it down even further. All right, T. In T, and then also in N from the other policy, they're non-consistent. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, sorry, S, I jumped ahead. I can't even read my own handwriting today. S, my bad. S number 4 says, S number 4, in this policy, in 2521, the last two sentences, if the objection is not resolved to the parent's legal guardian satisfaction, the principal shall refer the matter to the appropriate district level curriculum supervisor, and then that decision of that district level curriculum supervisor shall be final. In the other policy, because it's repetition, it actually says the assistant superintendent.
Because that's where we made that modification.
Okay, so don't they need to be the same? Or do we, as the assistant superintendent, are you the district level curriculum supervisor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes to all above. But this would be the piece that we would put J.
Okay. Right. So it won't, but either way, whichever one we want, if we're gonna, even if this, or if it needs to be consistent, but yes, this is where we would need to put J in that whole process. T. In this, and it was also in the other one, this one's a little bit different. It adds that last sentence about how we identify it. But in T number 1, it refers, and T number 3, refers to the statewide ELA assessment, which is going away. So this will help us for next year, because we still have FSA this year. Well, assuming, I guess we still have to write according to current law, because according to current law, the governor has asked
Yes.
his legislature to do this, but it's not made law yet. It will probably happen, but if that time
Then
comes,
we'll amend the policy.
then we'll need to amend the policy. Okay.
I would suggest too that there will still be a statewide ELA assessment. That assessment may be progress monitoring or a different school. I think they chose those words with care on purpose.
Okay, so that we wouldn't necessarily have to come back and redo it all over again. Okay. All right. Oh, and yeah, that was it. I'm good.
Ms. Jenkins, do you have any questions? Ms. McDougall?
Good.
Ms. Campbell, thanks for those great points. I think if we can call Neola and ask them if they'll put her on payroll to review all their policies before they come to us.
No.
Mr. Gibbs, go ahead.
All right.
So we've had it before. Sometimes we all makes mistakes, whether it's Scrivener's errors or formatting errors or
Listen,
sometimes.
when you got that much going on, there's always going to be a room for error. All right, let's move on to board policy 3220, evaluation of personnel. Thank you, Ms. Klein, for everything that you presented today. Dr. Fetty, you're on the hot seat. Deputy Superintendent and Chief Human Resources Officers will provide the executive summary.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. The purpose of the proposed revisions to this policy is to ensure compliance with all applicable federal and state laws, Florida State Board of Education rules, board policies, administrative rules, procedures, and guidelines. Current policy does not accurately reflect the changes in state statute as it relates to the evaluation of personnel. The proposed changes reflect current statutory language. They encompass suggested language from Neola, and a major change is the updating of the percentage of student performance measures to reflect the current statute.
Any questions on the proposed policy?
I have a question.
Ms. Jenkins?
So under the instructional personnel, so that new addition, the performance evaluation of instructional personnel paragraph. Okay. Sorry, let me make sure I get my spot. Okay, the second sentence, the district's performance evaluation system is not limited to basing unsatisfactory performance of instructional personnel and school administrators solely upon student performance, but may include other criteria, yada, yada, yada. Is this language that's like coming directly from somewhere? I just, the one thing that I feel like is a little wishy-washy is, I feel like the first part of that sentence is alluding to the fact that it shouldn't only be on the performance of students, but then we use the word may, and so I just didn't know if we could maybe make that a little bit more direct.
We can, this is language out of Neola, but we
Okay.
can definitely, look at that.
That's it. I feel like when we put the word may in there, we kind of take away from the fact that it should be a culmination of everything and not just student performance.
Yeah, I'll take that back.
Okay, that's all I have.
Does anybody have any problems with changing the name?
It just depends on what it sounds like.
Dr. Petty, can you get that, just make sure that they're looped in before we bring it to the board, just to make sure they're good?
Yeah, I wrote myself a note, thank you.
Any other questions on 3220, Ms. McDougal?
I have one thing that I wrote in, and I don't know if this is a change. We redlined, the superintendent shall also notify the Florida Department of Education of any instructional
Wait,
staff
hang on,
member.
where are you?
I'm sorry. I'm still in, I think it's the instructional personnel.
Okay.
So we redlined it's way down near the bottom, right before support personnel starts up. It's redlined. So it says the superintendent shall also notify the Florida Department of Education of any instructional staff member who receives 2 consecutive unsatisfactory evaluations. So do we do that? Do they need that information? Why do they need that information? I mean, I know we redlined it, but did we take it out totally? Or?
No, we moved it into procedure.
Okay.
So yes, we do that, and we have moved that into procedure, which is still being tweaked.
Okay.
But all that has to follow.
We'll follow statute.
Is that statute that we can follow that? Okay.
You good, Ms. McDougal? Ms. Campbell?
Okay, so under instructional personnel, also number, letter C, I'm sorry, not also, but also under that letter C, it says, this is about the evaluation system for instructional personnel will, letter C says, include a mechanism to examine performance data from multiple sources, including opportunities for parents to provide input into employee performance evaluations when appropriate. I'm just wondering what that might look like.
Oh, thank you.
Is that something that we're doing currently or?
So as far as parents providing input, that's part of the statutory language, it's part of the Neola language. We do parent surveys, and only things that can be placed in, like in a personnel file or in an evaluation, have to be reduced to writing.
Okay.
They aren't just somebody complains about a teacher, if that's what
Right.
you're concerned about.
Right. So, but if it rises to the level of a serious complaint that we have to look in as far as discipline?
And it's also contractual in our
All right.
CBA.
Okay. And then under letter D, it says, identify those teaching fields for which special evaluation procedures and criteria are necessary. Would that include, for example, music teachers or other elective courses that, maybe the reading or math scores, even though music absolutely helps with those things, but would it include those kinds of instructional employees, or what?
It's
would-
more like we have a resource teacher rubric, they're still
Okay.
teachers, but it's a different rubric.
Okay,
If you're a
because they're not
classroom
in the
teacher,
classroom.
you're under a classroom teacher rubric.
Okay, got it, thank you. And then letter H, this was also under the evaluation system for instructional personnel will. It says, will include a portion of each instructional staff member's compensation based on the employee's performance evaluation as required by state law. I wonder if that should say, instead of will include, it should say be included in. I don't know if that's, if we're talking about compensation, are we saying?
Oh, I see what you're saying, it's grammatically not correct.
Right, should it say that this evaluation is going to be included in their compensation? There's something in there that,
Yeah, I got that.
right, okay, because the way it's worded, it sounds like how much you make is going to be evaluated.
So it's, we have pay for performance in the state statute.
Right. Under support personnel, letter C, and this is, we already have this in the other language, and also in the admin section at the top, under letter C, there is this part about may be required to take recognized examinations as deemed necessary. I'm assuming it might mean like a drug test or anything else. But my question is, why do we have for admin and support personnel if we don't have something similar language in the instructional? Is it because of the contract, or, I mean, the instructional contract is obviously way longer than either of the other two.
So we have two things. One is fitness for duty, and the other is a mental health fitness for duty. It applies to all employees. And part of it is moderated by our contractual agreement with our collective bargaining agreement with BFT. But we have it, you'll notice that these are not Neola. When you look at Neola's policy, theirs is about instruction. Whatever decision was made many years ago to remove the 4,000 levels, we've incorporated support and administration into the 3,000 level policy. So that's our own language, and it relates to fitness for duty.
Okay, so it's not that we don't have where we can send.
Yes, we absolutely do, and
That's
we,
part of the contract.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have on this one.
Got it. Anybody else? Any concerns? Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Thank you, Dr. Teddy. Now we're ready for policy 8141, mandatory reporting of misconduct by employees. Dr. Teddy will provide the executive summary.
The purpose of the proposed revisions to the policy is to ensure compliance with all applicable federal and state laws, Florida State Board of Education rules, board policies, administrative rules, procedures, and guidelines. In addition, the proposed revisions promote transparency and accountability. This is being revised for technical and statutory changes, and these revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
Any questions on 8141?
Nope.
Ms. Jenkins? Oh, you guys, we have to,
It's
just
a
so you know.
3-hour workshop, you guys.
Yeah, right, the workshop, we have a time certain at 11. So whether we talk about it or not, we're here till 11 before we start this meeting.
No, it is a time certain.
So if you guys-
I don't have anything.
Okay, I'm just saying.
I know you would like me to have some.
No, I don't want the will of the board to be reduced just because of time. I want you guys to know that, so if everybody's good, we're good.
When you moved this from one, I think we moved it from workshop to work, or, can't help me. We moved it down, there weren't any changes, right? It was just moving it from, into a work session, right? There wasn't a new attachment.
No,
For
there
this
were,
one? Yeah, okay.
this is the same one that was submitted, and this is
Right.
all related
Well, make sure I
to
didn't miss
statutory changes on not just instructional personnel reporting to PPS if there are any incidents that affect the health, safety, or welfare of a student, but all educational support personnel as well. It's updating our statutory language that became effective July 1st.
See, I did have a question.
Absolutely. I think it's great. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, let's move on. Last policy is 8710 on insurance. Dr. Teddy will provide the executive summary.
The purpose of the proposed revisions to the policy is to ensure compliance with all applicable federal and state laws, Florida State Board of Education rules, board policies, administrative rules, procedures, and guidelines. In addition, the proposed revisions promote transparency and accountability. This policy is being revised to clarify the settlement authority of certain legal claims regarding personal injury, property damage, and workers' compensation in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following: the addition of authorization for settlement of certain legal claims and monetary limits regarding same. The proposed revisions encompass suggested language from Neola and our own process.
Thank you, Dr. Teddy. Any questions?
Yes. I just wondered if, Mr. Gibbs, you could help me with I noticed the sovereign, I had to go look up the sovereign immunity, and it was 200,000 in some cases, 300,000 in other
200,
cases.
300, 200 individual, 300 incident.
Okay, so I was gonna say, can you explain the difference between those two? So that would be, it's kind of like your car insurance. All right,
Individual versus the entire event.
right, okay. So if there's more than one person filing
Capped at
about the
300.
same thing, they split it, okay.
That's what happened with Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
Right. It was being one incident, so they were capped at 300 unless they can get more, but they have to go through a claims bill.
Claims process.
Okay, but does the sovereign immunity only doesn't apply?
It doesn't apply to some claims.
Okay. So what we're asking, sorry, got out of the red line, is, just to be clear, is that our risk management person working with a third-party administrator can approve all those up to 100,000. If it goes above that, can go to the superintendent of the sovereign immunity.
Yes.
So then, I know like the ones that we're having today, that goes away.
Yep.
So, okay.
They would
But it-
fall under
But it
sovereign.
allows Dr. Mullins to be able to directly supervise this. Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Dugan? As long as we don't negotiate with terrorists, I'm okay. So one of the things that we end up doing, and I've never seen this with you, Paul, is that we don't settle early. We don't want to let people know that. So, all right, I'm good. Everybody else okay on this policy? All right, any other work that needs to be done? School board members, do you have anything to say before we have the meeting? No? Ms. Campbell? All right, hearing no more discussion, this meeting is now adjourned.